Hello friends, welcome! Today's video, I know, look, no makeup. What is that? Sorry, I haven't put some on because I don't really like. Yeah, that was not English, but that's how I feel right now. Today has felt like the longest day on the planet, that's for sure. I don't know why. It's just a random Thursday that I'm filming this, and it just has felt like such a long day, and I'm ready to go to bed, and I'm ready for it to be Saturday, to be honest. So in today's video, we're going to be comparing two primers that are like creepily similar, and that is the Physicians Formula Butter Believe Putty Primer and the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. These two look like so similar. I mean, down to like everything about it, to be quite honest. So I really wanted to test them out and compare them and see which one's better or if they're literally the same thing, because we'll talk about like price comparison and all that stuff, but e.l.f. tends to be cheaper than Physicians Formula, so if they're the same or this one's better, why not just get the cheaper one? Unless you're like a huge Physicians Formula fan, I don't know. Anyways, alright, let's test these bad boys out. So, I've already washed my face, moisturized, all that good stuff. So let's talk about these primers. Let's start with the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. So this retails for $8, and let's read the little claims on it. On Ulta, it says, this perfecting poreless primer by e.l.f. Cosmetics creates smooth skin and preps it with squalane. Is that how you pronounce that? To moisturize and grip makeup for all day wear. The velvety texture glides over the skin, smoothing over imperfections for a poreless effect. 100% vegan and cruelty-free. So it sounds great. It's got 4 stars on Ulta website. It comes in this little twist jar thing, just like this, and this is what it looks like. It's very light pink, but I'm assuming it'll sheer out on your skin. The Physicians Formula one, we're going to talk about that one next, but like, look at this. Even their packaging is like they chose the exact same packaging. I don't know if they have the same labs or anything, but they definitely chose the same packaging. This one is the Physicians Formula Butter Believe It Putty Primer. It retails for $9.99 on the Ulta website, so it's really only $2 more, but figured I'd compare them anyways because they're practically the same thing. If my app would load. Alright, so let's read the claims on this guy. It says, the Physicians Formula Butter Believe It Putty Primer is an ultra-luxurious, velvety smooth putty primer infused with the proprietary butter complex to deliver a radiantly soft, poreless complexion. Incredibly creamy and buttery texture preps skin and allows makeup to glide on smoothly for all day wear. Awesome. Both of them sound amazing. I will say the putty primer, I know this is a new product. It only has 2 reviews on Ulta, but it also only has 2.5 stars. So those 2 people weren't really big fans of the primer. So I guess we'll have to compare. Like it said, it's the exact same thing as the e.l.f. one. Like if I hold them up without their caps, like can you tell the difference? This is the e.l.f. one and this is the Physicians Formula one. That's like crazy. Exact same. What? Alright, so on this half of my face, I'm going to, let's just address this right away. My nails are atrocious and I need to fix them. I know. I'm lazy. It's fine. It is what it is. Anyways, on this side of my face, I'm going to be applying the e.l.f. primer, and this side of my face, I'm going to be applying the Physicians Formula. Then I'm going to use a foundation that I'm very familiar with. That way I can really test out, how well these primers work. Starting with the e.l.f. one, it feels very creamy. This is the e.l.f. one. It's going to be really hard to only apply it on half my face. I have to be very, conscious of that. Start in the center of my face and just smooth it out to the edges. Gonna get half my nose, half my chin, all that jazz. So right off the bat, this side is definitely looking a little bit more smoothed out. I wouldn't say it's like poreless or anything like that, but it's definitely looking much more smooth. I mean, I have freckles and I have redness, so we'll cover that with foundation. But so far, it's definitely looking a little bit smoother than no primer. So let's try the Physicians Formula one on the other side. The Physicians Formula one feels a little bit more greasy. I don't know if that's exactly the right word, but it's definitely not as thick. It feels a little bit more, I don't want to say oily because I don't know if it's going to feel that way on the skin, but it's definitely not as thick as the e.l.f. one. Alright, again, starting in the center of my face and working its way outwards. So now that I've kind of dug into both of them, this is the e.l.f. one and this is the Physicians Formula one, and you can kind of see looking at them. I wish the camera picked it up a little bit Better? Okay, there you can kind of see. This one looks like I just kind of like stuck a finger in it, whereas this one kind of looks like a balm almost. And it feels that way on the skin too, like the left side of my face kind of feels a little greasy. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Whereas the right side of my face doesn't. It just feels like I'm letting a primer sink in. So right off the bat, I'm not sure how I feel about like the texture of this Physicians Formula one, but you know, we'll see how. I'm gonna let it sink in for just a second and then apply some foundation on top, and we'll see how the foundation looks on top. So that's kind of the whole point of a primer. So for foundation today, like I said, I wanted to use one that I'm really familiar with and already know that I like the way it looks on my skin, so I can tell if things are off based on the primers. So I'm going to be using the Colourpop Pretty Fresh, I can't ever speak, the Colourpop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Hydrating Foundation. I use the shade Light 55N. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this guy. I like this foundation a lot because it is hydrating and it's pretty, like, really, I would say it's like super duper full coverage, but it's pretty darn close. And I just think I've never had an issue with not liking the way it looks on my skin, no matter what primer I use under it. So I always prefer something hydrating because your girl is dry. Alright, I'm just going to give that a minute to dry down while I apply concealer as well. I'm going to go ahead and add some concealer, just a little bit today. I'm using the CoverGirl True Blend Undercover Concealer in the shade Porcelain. I'm just going to add a little. This is a pretty full coverage concealer, so you really don't need a lot. I always just add little dots of this kind at least. Although sometimes I go overboard with the concealer, let's be honest. The Miracle Concealer. Alright, so before I go ahead and set with powder, I kind of wanted to look a little bit and compare the two sides. My skin definitely looks super smooth on both sides. I can still see like a little bit of pores. Like it's not a miracle worker and completely erased my pores, but it definitely made it look a whole lot smoother on both sides. I will say I can still kind of feel this side like feeling a little bit, it just feels a little heavier on this side. Like this side of my face doesn't feel like, yeah, I'm wearing, you know, a primer, full coverage foundation, and all that jazz. Whereas this side, it kind of does. So I don't love that, but maybe I just need to give it some time to dry down and set it and do the rest of my makeup. I don't know. We'll see. I have mixed feelings right now, but I want to give it the full opportunity to be its best. If that makes any sense at all. Probably not. Oh well. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and finish applying the rest of my makeup off camera real quick, and then we'll jump back in and talk about final thoughts before we go on with the day and do a final check-in. Alright, we're back with everything on the face. If you're wondering what a few things are, I did use the Alamar Cosmetics Spanglish palette on my eyes, and on my lips is the Revlon Super Lustrous Shine Nude Illuminator lipstick. It's the shade 20. In Nude Illuminator. I did use the Morphe Continuous Setting Mist to set the face, as I normally would, you know, set with setting spray. Anytime I try something new, I try to do everything else the way I normally would, because why change it up for one product? Because then I'm not going to really understand if it works for the way I do my makeup. So let's talk about my thoughts as of right now. I still feel the same way about how it feels on my face. I will say, like, as far as everything blending out on the skin goes, I didn't really see, you know, any issues with bronzer not blending out on top of everything or blush, and like the overall product looks good. Like I'm not really seeing any crazy difference. Both of the sides look really nice and smooth. I really do love the way it looks. Like I'm really enjoying the way my skin looks right now. I just don't like the way this side feels, specifically like here on my chin a little bit and like up here as well as on my forehead. I don't know if that's my fault for not smoothing it out enough, which I feel like I did, but it just feels like, I don't know, it just feels a little more makeup-y on this side, if that makes sense. I want to try and show you guys this texture difference, because feeling them, there is definitely a texture difference. So yeah, this is the e.l.f. Putty Primer, and this is the Physicians Formula one. Just looking at the texture, like I put the same amount of pressure into the little jar on both, but I picked up more product on this one because this one is a lot thicker and a lot creamier, whereas this one feels a little bit more oily, and I guess that's because it did say it's like butter or something, like butter infused. Like, I don't think it's like actual butter, but I mean, maybe it is. I'd have to look at the ingredients. But I think that property is what's making it like a little bit more oily. And like, I don't know. The texture of this one is just a little more lightweight in this one. Like, if you're an oily girl, I would stay far away from this one just based off the texture alone. Luckily, I am a dry girl. Well, not luckily, let's be honest. Nobody wants to be either. Everyone wants to have normal skin. Based off first impressions, I am leaning towards the e.l.f. one more than the Physicians Formula one, just based off of my initial, application and thoughts. Like I said, the end product looks pretty much the same on both sides. This one just feels a little bit more oily and greasy on my skin versus the e.l.f. side where I don't really feel the makeup. On this side, I can really feel the makeup, and that's weird for me, honestly. But I'm going to go ahead and wear this for the rest of the day. I wish that I would have applied this earlier in the day because it's already 6:02. I am going to wear this. I do have a lot of things that I need to do this evening, so I should honestly be up pretty late. So we'll get a good 2 hours out of this. A little test. All right, so I'm just going to go on with my evening, and I'll see you guys for you in a short minute. For me, a couple hours, and we'll check back in and see how everything is looking and lasting. Welcome back. Well, for me, it's been like hours, but for you, it's been a split second. But wanted to do an end of the night check-in, so it is now actually 10:57. Been just about 6 hours of wearing this makeup, which is a pretty decent amount of time. I know I prefer to test things, like, honestly, as long as possible, because I'm somebody who, if I'm putting makeup on in the morning, especially like if you have a 9 to 5 job, I mean, that's already 9 to 5. That's a long time. And then if you're doing anything after, you need it to last for that. So sometimes you really need things to last all day. But since we're more just comparing the difference between the two primers, I think it's okay if we do just 6 hours today. Also, I'm really tired and I need to go to bed. I was going to do some editing tonight, but not so much anymore. Probably just going to lay in bed and fall asleep to YouTube videos. It's fine. But let's kind of just examine. So I didn't touch up at all. I haven't done a spray refresh, which I like to do sometimes. I haven't done like any touching up under the eyes or any blotting for any oiliness. I'm dry, so I only blot when it's really bad. Like, my foundation's starting to break up a little bit here on this side, the Physicians Formula side a little bit, as well as a tiny bit like around my nose on both sides, which is pretty normal. I was wearing a mask earlier as well for quite a while, so that could be contributing. So I just want to drop that little tidbit in there. I'm just knowing I'm keeping that in mind. My skin still looks really nice and smooth on both sides. I will say that. The feeling of like the greasiness that the Physicians Formula side had earlier is not as bad as it was when I first initially applied it. I will say I can definitely still feel a little bit of a difference on the two sides of my face, but it's not as bad. Like, it's not as heavy and greasy feeling as it was before, so it definitely like needed some time to sink into the skin. But overall, I think the finish is the same. I think the lasting power is the same. So it's going to come down to, honestly, the texture you prefer and if you're oily or not. For me, I mean, even though I'm not an oily girl, I probably am going to lean more towards the e.l.f. one just because I prefer the texture of it. I'm not really a huge fan of like I guess technically it is like a buttery, it's a little more oily and greasy feeling on this one. I hate using those words because I don't know if that's like the appropriate term, but I don't know, that's just my thoughts. So I'm not sure. I think if you're oily and you've been interested in trying one of these, I would go for the e.l.f. one if you're oily, because I feel like this is just going to add to your oily skin and just be a hot mess if you are oily. So again, I'm going to lean more towards the e.l.f. one. I mean, it's $2 cheaper, and I personally prefer the texture of this one a little better and the feeling on my skin, but I think this one still does what it claims. It definitely still smooths the skin out and makes it last a really long time. So makeup still looks like pretty darn good for it being on for 6 hours already. Can't complain on that forefront. But I personally just prefer the feeling and the texture of the e.l.f. one over the Physicians Formula Butter Believe It. Probably still use it. I mean, it's in my collection, so I'm going to use it up best I can, unless I start to find some serious issues. And maybe on my dry, like super, super dry days, I can see it doesn't feel as oily and greasy on me. But those are my thoughts on those guys. Now let's wrap up this video so I can go to bed. Alright guys, that completes today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was helpful in deciding on, if you've been wanting to try either of these, and maybe my thoughts helped you out a little bit in understanding the two different products and kind of how they compare to each other, because they are like creepily similar. With that being said, if you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below before you leave, and also hitting that post notification bell so you're notified every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when I upload a new video. Also hit that thumbs up button so I know you like these type of videos where I compare two super similar products. Even if they are both drugstore, I feel like it's still worth comparing, because, why pick up one if you might like the other one better, or vice versa, you know what I'm saying? But definitely hit that thumbs up if you did enjoy this type of video. You can also check me out on Instagram at JSanchez Beauty, where I post randomly, occasionally. I try. Thank you so much for your time today, guys. I really appreciate it. I enjoy making these videos for anyone that will watch them. So I hope you at least liked it. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye, guys.